I think one of the biggest ones is understanding the role of means, so that Allah basically just these 3 points. Allah does through means, without means, and against means. If you understand that as a concept, you've understood a lot. Because typically the world runs with worldly phenomena. There are means, right? Air, breathing, drinking, moving about, muscles, energy. There's a system. So what does through the means mean? It means that Allah is they're just a veil. He's the one really enacting everything. But you're seeing it as a series of images in this way, but He's the one doing it. But He's also able to do without means, like He took care of Maryam and fed her without, right? She's stuck in a room and He took care of her in terms of her rizq. And against the means, where camels are coming out of rocks and water's coming out of rocks and the seas being split and, strange things are happening. Allah's showing us that I can operate this way, I can operate that way, or I can operate this way. Most of the time, He operates through the means. Most of the time. And the believer kind of cracks that code and says, Allah's doing it all. The means is just a veil. It's a sitara. It's a curtain. That's all it is, right? And when you understand that, then you understand, oh, wait a second. So the means aren't really doing anything. Allah's the one operating, but like through these means, because this is the world of means. This is the world of asbab. Oh, okay. So then I walk you through the role of means in your life and how to deal with them and how to, look at them and go about living your life in accordance with that understanding. You know the famous hadith about you draw nearer to Allah with nothing more beloved than what He's made incumbent upon you, and you continue to draw nearer to Allah with supplementary acts until He loves you, and if He loves you, He becomes, right?
The eyes in which you see.
Yeah. So Allah is showing you the path. He's saying, start with what? What I've made obligatory. Are my fara'id in place? Yes. Okay. Then what? He says, now extra acts, and be consistent. And then finally Allah says, hatta uhibba, until I love him. So when you're on the extra acts and you're consistent, Allah says a time will come when once I love you, so the point is God's love, then He annihilates you from the ego. He helps you crack, the code is cracked immediately. You see through the matrix, quite literally.
What do you mean, quite literally? Like you no longer... You see the soul of a tree or something? Like, what are you talking about?
It's kind of like that, but it's not like you see the reality of the tree. That it's not even really there. Yeah. It's just a manifestation of God's actions. So when you look at it that way and you break down perception, all you find is perceiving. And all there is to that is your knowledge of it.
But it is there, right? You could touch it. You could feel it.
Because what is ihsan really? Like, when do you become a true muhsin? When you lose yourself.
Really? Is it ihsan excellence?
Yeah, but when do you have excellence? When the ego's not interfering, right? Otherwise, if the ego's interfering, you could be just doing what you're doing to show off. Getting nothing in the end. Ihsan is the science of sincerity, basically.
But if I make my bed in the morning and I do it with ihsan, with excellence, I'm not trying to show off to anyone. I mean, maybe
no one's seeing. Let's say you are doing your bed and no one's watching you.
Yeah,
but someone is watching you. Who?
Yeah, God.
So what's ihsan? Is it just doing it in perfection, or is it being aware of Allah's watching you while you're doing it?
Yeah.
Imagine if you move in that way, like every movement. There was a sheikh, when he would read from the book of hadith, even the way he would move his hand, you would feel an intense sense of presence. You felt like every move he made was calculated and he's extremely present. Some people move like that. But most people now are, and this is going at very high speeds, right? The mind.
That's me.
Yeah, most of us.
Yeah.
Because that's where Shaytan is. The mind is waswasa, right? It's time. That's where he goes in. And that's why it's helpful to distinguish between the voice of Shaytan and your own voice and the voice of angels. based on, the angels will encourage you to do good acts of worship. Get up to pray now, time for salah. Then the shaitan will say, you got time. Then the nafs is like lazy. Yeah, I got time. How do you distinguish? How do you know? Because the voice that typically comes right after the encouraging voice is the voice of the waswas, shaitan. Because the first voice is angelic, so shaitan wants to ruin their work. Get up and pray, it's time for pray. There's the adhan. Oh, you got time. Oh yeah, I got time. You think it's your own voice, don't you? When you hear that voice saying, I got time, right? You think it's your own. Do you really know if that's your own? Like, where'd that thought come from? Did you really think it up, or did it just... Yeah. So, and then God's inspirational thoughts for Tawheed. So knowing the different voices, then you're like, oh, wait a second. And it's because when you first crack the code, you're like, wait, right now I should be getting up to pray even though I really don't want to. But mujahada is going against my wants for Allah's wants. I don't feel like it, but that's وَالَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا فِينَا, those who strive. What does جَاهَدُوا فِينَا mean? جَاهَدُوا فِي أَوَامِرِنَا. They strive to fulfill our commands, even though their nafs is kicking. The nafs is like, oh, I gotta make wudu, take off my socks. I'm at the airport, put my feet in the sink, and then pray. Oh man,
What's up with this put your feet in the sink thing? Is that required?
Bro, I had a friend who he would tell me, every time I would go to the washroom, he worked for those big companies like Boeing or something. It's like every time I would put my foot in the sink to wash it for wudu, this guy would time his walking into the washroom right when I would put my feet in there. He's like, he'd catch me every time, and then he's like, one day he walked up to him and he's like, you must have the cleanest feet in the world.
No, but can't you just do it like
wipe over the socks?
Well, no. Even if you take your socks off, I just put my foot on my knee,
Your foot on your knee?
Yeah.
How do you put your foot on your knee?
One
foot on the other knee.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll go like this. I'll literally go like this. And then I'll wipe.
Your wipe.
Well, or I'll straight up do the whole that's why I don't know if you went into my bathroom, that's why that rug is wet.
Yeah, that gets wet because you're not supposed to wipe the feet. You're supposed to wash the feet.
Right, but what if I take a good amount of water?
Yeah,
and then wash the feet, but don't put it in the sink. I don't want to put it in the sink.
Yeah, that's
kind of
as long as you fulfill the conditions, you're fine. You get it all wet.
I get it wet
above the up to the ankle.
Yeah,
because some people will leave some parts dry. They'll just rush over it, and they're not careful between the toes also.
Between the toes.
But I'm talking about some people, they'll just wipe over the socks.
Yes.
Just make sure they're thick enough, the socks.
Yeah. Well, what if you make wudu and then put on your socks? Then you can wipe over the socks throughout the day, right?
Yes. Okay. If they're the type of socks that are where it's permissible to wipe over them. There's scholars that talk about that stuff.
Yeah, different madhahib have different opinions on it. Right?
Yeah, like Imam Shafi'i, there's a rukhsa to wear thicker socks, but there are conditions for what that means. Hanafis are a bit stricter, sticking, I think, to khufs or leather socks, and the Athari school is a bit more lenient on that level. They'll wash over, they'll just wipe over thin socks and stuff.